There's so much to love about Valentine's Day. The chocolates, the flowers, and of course those cute little cards that tell our loved ones just how much we care. And that's what I'm creating today. If you're looking for a very special card for a very special person that comes together in no time, you're going to love today's project. It is a Valentine's Day card, but I'm hoping by the end of the video, your mind will be filled with ideas for you to use this one design year round. It's been years since I purchased a Valentine's Day collection, so I am working with lots of random bits and pieces today. I have a couple of sequin mixes here from Spiegelmum Scraps, and I am going with a very traditional Valentine's Day theme here: reds, whites, pinks, and blacks. I'll be sure to link everything in the description box below. So today I am making 5 different cards, but they all use this same card base. First up, you'll need to trim a piece of card that is 10.5 inches long by 5.75 inches wide. This is a tri-fold card, so we do need to make 2 score lines. The first one at 1.5 inches, the second one at 6 inches. All of these measurements are along the long side of the card, and you're going to fold your folds inwards. If you find that inside fold a little bit tight, what you can do is trim off the thinnest little piece from the end of the cardstock there. It's not even 1/4 inch, it's like the tiniest little piece, and it'll give you a little bit more space on the inside there. I'm going to burnish all my folds down, and then I can begin work on the belly band. So yes, these cards have a band that holds them together. For this piece, you'll need a strip of cardstock that is 1.5 inches wide by 10.5 inches long. No need for score marks because we're just going to wrap this piece around the card base itself. To make sure it's sitting nice and square at 90 degrees, I just line up the end of that paper strip with one of the edges on the card. You may need to adjust it slightly. Just be sure that everything is nice and square before you seal in those folds. Here you can see that the ends do overlap, and that's on purpose. You're going to secure that with some liquid glue. And that is your basic base. I can now start the fun stuff. I am going to be working with this background die cut, and I want that die cut to fill the entire front of the card. But why make one card when you can make 2 or more? So I am going to quickly whip up a couple more bases here, and I am going to mix and match the colors so I have a bit of variety to work with. This card design does work really well with double-sided papers. So this one is red on one side and pink on the other, and I really love that combination. This second card is almost assembled. I'm just going to wrap the band around the card like so, and then I will add a little bit of liquid glue where it overlaps there, and that will secure that in place. It's time to go ahead and make the shaker pockets now, starting with a die cut piece that is a background die, and I'm going to insert them into these pocket pages. These guys are my secret hack, easy way to create a shaker pocket. I've popped them in place and then stitched around 3 sides so that now I have a pocket to add my sequins into. I'm going to be super generous here and really fill this pocket up. Some of the chipboard pieces were facing the wrong way, so I'm going to give those a little flip, and once I'm happy with that, I will stitch around that open edge. Now that all 4 sides are secured, I can then take my scissors and trim very, very closely to that background piece of paper, and everything stays nice and secure. Here's the finished shaker pocket, and as you can see, it fits perfectly on the card front there. That's because the card was actually measured and made to fit the background die cut. Of course, I'll leave this one linked below, but just know that if you want to use one that's in your stash, you can adjust the card measurements so that you still get an exact fit. I'm going to create the second shaker pocket now. This one is actually going to go on a darker based card. So I'm going to go with a white background and this really fun red, white and silver sequin mix. To secure the shaker pocket onto the card, I have actually stitched it in place. And that's because my background die there is quite open and I didn't want any glue showing through. To keep the inside of the card looking nice and clean, you can add a square of cardstock and that will cover up the stitches. I'll show you that here in a moment. Once the shaker pocket was all sorted, I actually found that it was much easier to work on the band first. Any embellishments that you add to your band will be the ones that are sitting on the topmost layer of the card, and I just found it easier to work from the top down. To cover up the backside of my stitching, I have gone with a contrasting colour. I really like how it adds a little detail for the inside of the card, so it is pretty and practical. I'll show you how that one ended up at the end of the video. On to the lighter version. This one's going to have a much softer feel in terms of colours. I also wanted to show you a no-sew shaker pocket. Many of you have said that you love shaker pockets but don't have sewing machines. So here is my no sewing version. You can do this with any sized chipboard frame. This one is quite small, but any size works. And the first thing you're going to do is layer a small piece of vellum onto the back of it, so it will sit flat onto and against the frame. I'm going to use double-sided tape for this because vellum and wet glue are not friends. I did have to add the smallest, tiniest little pieces down the bottom there, but avoid it as much as you can. The next thing you'll want to do is add a little pile of sequins in the position where you want them placed. What we're going to do is add 3D foam onto the frame. So you've now got a layer of the chipboard frame, a piece of vellum, and now the 3D foam. And that's going to give us some dimension. And once we pull off that adhesive, you're going to position the frame right on top of those sequins. Take your time and a lot of care to make sure it is positioned exactly where you want it to be, because you don't really get a second go at this. It was at this point that I realized that the flap on the left covered up some of the frame, and I didn't want that. The frame is quite dimensional and I did want the flap there to sit very flat. No problem, I'm just going to trim a section of it off so it becomes quite a thin strip down that left-hand side. That's looking much better, and I can now add the belly band on top and start thinking about how I'm going to decorate that. I had initially thought to use a white band to match the card base, but I really like the contrast in colours, so I've switched that out for this pink one. The band for this one will have a chipboard flower cluster. I do have a couple of other elements to add, and I'll show you the finished card here in just a moment. So now you know how to create the basic design for this card. I do want to show you a couple of variations. Let's start with the first one that I made. So this is the standard design, and this is the little sleeve that slides off the band, and the standard width flap. So you just open that up, and here's our beautiful shaker pocket. I've added just some simple embellishments down the bottom, and you've got loads of space to write a message. And this piece here is the piece that I added to cover up the stitching, because the pocket is actually stitched onto the card there. Let's slide this back on. Lovely. This is the second card, and you'll recall it's the one with the no-sew shaker pocket. Now this is quite dimensional here, so I didn't want this flap to extend over the frame, so I have trimmed it down. Instead of being 1.5 inches, which is this one, it is actually only 1/2 inch wide. It still functions in exactly the same way, but it's an adjustment that I had to make for the card design itself. Inside, I have added a little sentiment. This is just a die set, and again, lots of space for you to write a message. I really love how this one turned out. I think it's very simple, but a very classic style card. Here's a closer look at the band. I've added an embellishment flag piece there, and then this is chipboard and then some thickers. Here's another example of the standard design with the large shaker pocket on the front. So this is the standard measurement, and I've kept the band very simple for this one. I, of course, added a bow because I'm all about them bows, and I have just gone with a sentiment. So this is just some puffy alphas, and they're really pretty gold sparkle. That's all that I've added for that. And then this is nice and plain. Now, I did also want to show you, this is what it looks like if you don't add that extra sheet of card. So I do recommend that you do that because I just feel like it keeps the inside of the card really clean. It also adds a little bit of interest. So instead of having all of one plain color, you've got a variation there as well. Super simple, but super, super cute. And I could imagine this one in lots of different styles, like for a birthday. So you could just put like happy or birthday. You could do anniversary, and then chop and change the sequin mix to match the occasion. And like really, really simple and easy to put together. Here's another variation for you. This one is actually only 5 inches tall. So you can actually keep all of the other measurements exactly the same and just trim the height for a bit of a different look. I felt that the proportions for this card were better in a smaller format. I did start by using this embellishment. So this embellishment was the start of the whole card. I wanted to use it up. And I just felt that, yeah, it was just because of the size of this and then placing it on the bigger card, it didn't feel right to me. So I've just trimmed that down. I really like the layers on this one too. So very simple sentiment here, and then of course the tag and a bow. And then underneath here, I've just added a couple of die cuts. And then the title then goes Love You, which is quite cute, I think, and very plain and simple on the inside. This one doesn't have any stitching either. So I wanted to include a couple that did not have stitching and then a couple that did have stitching, just so that you can see the different looks there. I know not everybody has a sewing machine. This last card is certainly a special one. I have really mixed things up here. The band itself actually slides left to right. So for all of these ones, I've had the band go up and down, but I've actually switched the orientation of the card around. So the band for this one goes left to right. So it slides out that way. And you'll notice that most, or actually all of the card base covers the front there. So for these ones, I've had a little bit of this background showing, so it stays in position. But for this one, this whole piece comes off and you're left with quite a blank base when you've done that. And then the card itself is more of a vertical card rather than horizontal. See how it opens this way and not this way. So you can mix and match the design in lots of different ways. So you can see I have created lots of little variations of this card base. The options really are endless. I love the idea of being able to change the orientation, of course change the size and shape of the card slightly to fit your needs. You know what really makes these cards? It's the stitching. It's such a lovely handmade element to add to any papercraft project. Kind of like icing on a cake. If you'd love to add stitching onto your papercraft projects and you're not sure where to start, you need to watch this video next. I've made it especially for beginners and it goes through everything you need to know to get started. I'll see you all again very soon. Until then, bye.